Welcome to Module 8, Leading Data-Driven Decision-Making, part of 641, School District Operations and Leadership.
Hello again, this is Chris Sadler, Director of Human Resources for the Sun Prairie Area School District. I've introduced other slideshows, so I won't go over my past here. You kind of know it, and I left some of the notes up there. But this slideshow is really important because educational philosophy is really about what you believe as a leader and how it plays out in your everyday work. And this quote by John F. Kennedy always kind of sits in the top of my head is that children are the world's most valuable resource and its best hope for the future. And that's really the baseline for my why, is that the kids we work with are truly going to carry our country, our communities forward. And that's why I place so much importance on being an educational leader. And that's why a lot of educational leaders do what we do.
So the first thing we have to think about is what type of evidence will you look at as far as your data analysis of your school, of your district, or your department, whatever it might be, depending on your role. Really, there's 4 types of evidence. I'm sure there's more that, little pieces you can think of, but there are observational and anecdotal pieces of evidence, just what you see and what your supervisor is seeing and reporting to you. You can use surveys for students, caregivers, staff, leadership, community, and keep kind of going on from there to gain evidence and support for what is going on within your decisions, and also kind of give you an insight that's a little deeper than just academic outcomes. Surveys sometimes and observational anecdotal are considered qualitative, which means that basically they're not number-based. They're more of like some type of opinion within that, but it's just as valuable. I think a lot of the times we hear gold standard evidence or gold standard data, and that's the only thing you can get from like assessments and tests. But observational, anecdotal, and surveys are just as important because it gives you a deeper look into maybe why outcomes are happening the way they are. There's also common formative assessments. They're tied to curriculum and standards. Those are the things that happen every day within the classroom, maybe like a grade level assessment that everybody uses, and just to see where kids are to make instructional decisions from. And these are also can be formative at the building and district level too, that it's not maybe once a year state standardized test, but it's an ongoing assessment that's going on through each quarter or each semester, whatever it might be. And then obviously we have the common standardized tests, much like the forward exam, the W KCE exam from the past, those types of statewide assessments, or even nationwide assessments like ACTs, SATs, and things like that. The other parts, levels of data driven decision making that you have to think about is the actual levels. The actual levels are things that, when you think about the individual and teacher classroom level, there's decision making happening there on a second by second basis at times. But that leads into your PLC and grade level department type of data decision making going on, where a teacher brings his or her observations from a classroom right into the team that's working on maybe the same area, or you might have cross grade level, cross department, where they're sharing those information with each other as a group or grade level or PLC. That's linked into the school data-driven decision-making model, where the school is maybe looking at all the classrooms combined and how is that happening within a grade level. What are all 3rd grade students looking like? What are all 4th grade students looking like? And then you have the district level departments and district itself. So really what should be happening is you should have a strategic plan at the district level that trickles down to the school, which trickles down to the PLC, which trickles down to the individual classroom. And somehow they're all connected together so that when one has an outcome, the other one is affected by that as well. And they should be aligned in a way that whatever's happening at the classroom level is also being reflected at the district level, and people are paying attention to both. So a huge part of this is when you're really thinking about data-driven decision making, there has to be alignment and strategic planning. Because if you truly want to be data-driven and strategically thoughtful, that data has to have a purpose to it, and it has to be connected throughout your whole system or organization. You want that data to be targeted and aligned across the district, reaching down all the way down to the individual classroom. So a teacher can talk to the same assessment that's being used at the district level and understand how they connect in their specific classroom all the way up to the district level. No matter how big or small that district is, they want to be able to see that connection from what they're doing to what is actually being thought of at the district level. You want a clearly defined and connected strategic plan that helps people see, where do I fit into this bigger picture? How do the decisions I'm making at the individual level with my grade level or department at the PLC level, working towards a school goal, and then finally connected to a district wide goal. You want every staff member to be able to see how their role has an impact on the data and the goals that you're working towards. From your staff, from your support staff assistants, to your teachers, to your special area teachers, your special ed teachers, to your principals. You want everyone to understand where they can move the needle within their own individual role to help not just their own students, but every student across the system. And that's really what you're trying to do when you're thinking of looking at data and how that's connected to your strategic plan. So first, let's think about the classroom level. Teachers really do have formative assessments that are informing progress towards common assessments that eventually will be worked in with their PLC. Those formative assessments have to be targeted not only for the classroom's sake, but for the PLC to talk and have like an apples to apples comparison of, this is what I'm seeing in my kids, what are you seeing in yours? What are you doing because your kids are showing up better than mine? Is there something different that you're doing? Which leads to that conversation that it's not just about the individual classroom improving, but it's the whole PLC, eventually the whole school and the whole district. The one thing that I always remind people of, especially in the leadership level, is that too much data can be overwhelming and can lead to a loss of focus. We have so much data, and when you're thinking about a teacher, there is data constantly flying at them. If it's not observational, it's anecdotal, or it's a survey, or if it's the actual work that a child is doing right in front of them, that data is constantly flying at them. We want to make sure that what we're doing is whatever data we're paying attention to is very focused, and we only focus on that. Not that we want the teacher to say, well, I'm only going to focus on my literacy scores and everything else, whatever. But what I am trying to say is that if there is specific pieces of data that are important to the organization, to the school, and to the classroom, the teacher needs to be reminded of that is what you're focusing on in your conversations, especially with your PLC. Because if you open it up to 10, 12, 15 pieces of data, it just gets overwhelming, and that loss of focus means that it's not targeted, and you're not going to see that growth across not just in the classroom, but across the school. You want classroom teachers to do daily checks and weekly kind of dives into their classroom. As daily checks is, boy, I'm really curious how Bobby's doing today. Weekly dives are more, what is my classroom showing up as? Is there something that they're doing really well, and what is it that they're missing? And what can I do about that next? You want teachers to know what data will be discussed at the PLCs, and that they'll be prepared to almost present their data. When they present their data to their PLC, it just shows that this is what I've been thinking about, this is what I'm seeing, so the other teachers can hear that too and make connections. And then observational data is included and valuable. I always know that teachers are so connected with their kids and high-end relationships. They want to talk about what they're seeing. If we only focus on paper and pencil, or the reading assessment or whatever it might be, that observational data is just as important, because they're thinking about the whole child and really thinking like, what makes this child tick, and this is what I'm noticing. So you never want to push that aside. So the PLC or grade level department. This is built directly off the individual classroom teacher data, as the whole team will be discussing the same data, because you really want that individual teacher to be able to come in again and almost present what they're seeing and finding as students are producing work. You want to allow the discussion for both observational and anecdotal data, um, as it focuses on that specific area that the PLC is looking at. You want the time to be scheduled and very regular. You may have to look at different data points in biweekly or monthly scheduled timeframes. What I mean by that is if you had data point in math, you might want to focus on that in 1 week and then literacy the next, just because depending on how your time frame is, you may not get to it all. So you want to help your PLCs if you're the building leader or even the district leader, helping them manage their time so they can make sure they hit all those focus areas you want them to. And then you want to make sure that you help them create specific agenda items in order to make sure that everything is discussed and action steps can be taken. Much of the time, we spend a lot of time looking at the data and maybe kind of like admiring it, but action steps are not taken because you just run out of time. Because you talk about your kids and you talk about what you're seeing, because that is interesting. But the steps are what's really going to, make the difference when you actually take action. Many of you have probably heard of Richard DeFore. These questions are always like the ones that people kind of hold high for PLC work, but they are really straightforward and simple. You may have a different version of this in your district, but these are the ones that I always see that pop up in PLC discussions or some version of them. So, what are the questions they discuss within their PLC as a teacher group? Is what do we want all teachers to know and be able to do? How will we know if they learn it? How will we respond when some students do not learn? And how will we extend the learning for students who are already proficient? Those questions are really basic and simple, but they are the most important because all of them lead to an action. How will we do that? And I think that's very important. There is a PLC team example video here if you would like to watch. It's about 5 minutes long. It just shows a really good example of how teams can work together. And if you're a principal or somebody in a district level, I do like showing these videos to people as you're like trying to help shape these conversations. It helps them see it in action and it helps them model it themselves. So now going from the PLC level, you go to the school level. You take the PLC data analysis, make sure they're aligned to overall school data and decision making and district strategic goals. Overall school discussions are driven by the same questions as posed in the PLC data discussions that I talked about before with DeFore, or whatever questions you decide PLC should work towards. One thing I forgot to mention is make sure that if you don't, do the DeFore 4 questions, you limit your questions to 4 to 6, because I think once you get past that, it will take up time and people will not get to action steps. When you're looking at a school, this is a big emphasis on trends being seen in overall school data or grade level departments so they can see where they fit into the bigger picture. Where is my grade level fitting into the K5 system or the K8 system, whatever it might be, to help them see that and see those trends that are bigger than their own classroom. You want to make sure from a school level that you are giving time for cross-grade level discussions and departmental data comparisons and discussions as well. Because you want teachers from different levels to interact with the data together so they can tell people, hey, this is what I'm seeing in this grade level, or this is what I'm seeing in our department. What are you seeing in yours? Because a lot of even if they're teaching different subjects, there's still literacy involved, math involved with almost every single curricular area. And people can talk together about what they're seeing and if there's something that another teacher is doing to connect with kids in a better way. You want PLC to follow a whole school data discussion should be focused on, what was learned and what direction that should take the team. So the PLC wants to be able to take that whole school discussion, break it down to what it means to their grade level, and try to fit their next action step so it improves the entire school. And again, there's another video, just a quick example of a smaller school data discussion that you can use as a model for your own. So now you're at the district level. You want all data discussions and decisions tied directly to your strategic plan. We talk about it, especially in some prayer, on being cascaded or in connected goals. What that means is you have the district level goals that cascade. You just picture a waterfall, like those goals kind of falling down to the school, which then falls down to the PLCs or departments, and then falls down to the individual teachers. So you want it to just keep cascading down and have a connection between each level. And you want to work hard at that because it is very, very easy to see that splinter off. And the second it starts splintering off and going off in different directions, your strategic plan becomes unfocused and the goals you're setting aren't attained. You want principals and departments to report on a regular timetable, quarterly, mid-year, whatever it might be, to leadership team on goal attainment progress. This just helps the whole system understand where they're at. Just as much as a teacher needs formative assessments, the district level needs to see formative assessments too to see where they're at. They don't want to just start in the fall and then wait until June to find out what happened. You kind of want to see it within the meantime of the school year. You want leaders to be able to work with each other using those formative assessments to change strategies if needed. A lot of the times, I think there's a misnomer out there that strategic plans can't be changed. Now, obviously, you want to stick to the goals you set because you set them for a reason. But there might be little goals and outcomes within that can be tweaked because you're starting to notice something different in the mid-year that you didn't expect. Or a pandemic hits like we saw. Something that changes our direction. You want to be able to have that work together with other leaders to make those changes. And then finally, you want collaboration between departments to find ways to support one another. A lot of the times people talk about silos and you have a special ed department and you have a gifted and talented, and then you have special area. You have operations on one side, and they become very segmented, which is the same thing as splintering because everyone can have their individual focus. But if they're not seeing that, wow, you know what? If I work with that department over there on a specific goal, we might be able to actually help one another and help the whole district get to where it wants to. The school board a lot of the times does want to see, especially at the district level with strategic plans, they want to see ongoing progress reports. It's almost like their formative assessment data that they're looking at too. Like, are the leaders we've put in place and the teachers we put in place doing what we want them to do? Like, is the outcomes of the students that we have matching our expectations? And the school board is a very important partner in that because if they believe your work is going in the right direction, maybe you haven't hit your goals yet, but they can really support you out in the community, and that can make a big difference when you're getting to the point where your strategic plan is more and more communicated out and people know it more, that you want your school board to be able to support you, not just at school board meetings, but just the day-to-day conversations they have with community members. One thing that I just wanted to point out too, towards the end of this module, is that in the leverage leadership books, the one focused on schools and then the one focused more on district level leadership, they have DVDs in them, and this always makes me laugh because we're in 2000, the 20s now. So obviously DVDs are becoming a thing of the past, but the DVDs that are in there, if you can get your hands on a DVD player or a CD drive, um, they really have some really nice clips in them, like the ones I pointed out here that are great things to show your PLCs, your individual teachers, or your schools how to run data-driven decision-making type of discussions and data analysis that's there. Because what happens a lot of the times is what you see is what you get. And you want your teams to be able to see exemplar PLC discussions, because otherwise they will set an agenda and they'll kind of go through their own pattern over and over again. And it's good to point out, like, this is what we're looking for. This is the exact example. And these DVDs do a great job of that. They also have some really good documents in them. Finding the time key in the first one, implementation resources for principals, just a bunch of documents in there that can really help you stay focused and show your teams to understand the process of focusing on data. And then the other piece for the principal's manager guide also does the same thing. It's like, how do you have data driven discussions and decisions at the district or school level? And they really show up there. So I just highly encourage you to dig in there if you can. So you have an assignment coming up on just a couple weeks, and I wanted to give you kind of a heads up. Now this is totally different than what we just talked about, though it is related, because if you have a data-driven discussion that shows you need to put more financial emphasis somewhere, this is where budgeting comes into play. So we have a budget coming up, or a budget assignment coming up, and I wanted to explain it now so you have some time to think through it and talk with your cooperating administrator. Um, Depending on your certification area, you're going to be writing up a kind of a mock budget, though you can use the budget numbers that your cooperating administrator may give to you during this. So superintendents, school business administrators, you're looking at district and department budget. The principal is looking at building budget, director of instruction department budget, and then pupil services, special education, same thing, looking at department budget. I would, if especially in pupil services and special education, ask your cooperating administrator about budget functions like flow through funds and transfer service, because those are going to be really important for you to understand, because there's a lot of things that you can take advantage of as a special ed director that not everyone can. And they can be a little complex, but ask about them because they'll be really helpful. Within the assignment, feel free to put charts, tables, and graphs to support your written work. Be sure to include income if you can. Now, obviously, if you're a principal, many of the times it's like, this is your budget. You get $20,000, this is yours. And that comes from the district budget. So you might not have to pay a lot of attention to that. But if you're a superintendent or business administrator, you're going to want to talk a little bit about where your income is coming from. Like, what is your annual operating budget and where does that break down to? Same thing with pupil services, special education. You might have your cooperating administrator just ask them how much money comes in from transfer service or flow through dollars or whatever it might be. CIS funds are a big one too. There is a budget book example in here from Janesville. Feel free to take a look at that, and you can use that as your model if you'd like. So then you develop a detailed budget in your certification area. Hopefully I'll let you take a breath here in a second, but because I might put some anxiety into you when you say detailed budget. But let me talk through some hints first. First, ask your cooperating administrator for a copy of the spreadsheet or whatever they might use that they show their budget and like how they go through their budget. You can tie your assignment to the equity audit data, or you tie your assignment to your strategic plan. And what I mean by that is, if you see a budget item that you're like, boy, you know what? If I had it my way, this is what I would spend that money on, because you see in your equity audit or your strategic plan, it's fine to do that. And I actually think that's a great exercise to think through. Describe your priorities and highlight them with rationale. So if you pick a priority and you say, I really want to focus on this area and this is why, just explain why. There is a spreadsheet example that you can feel free to use in the example and resources. You'll see a couple examples of assignments that have been done in the past that will help you kind of see that this is not meant to be like you're going to go through a 30-page annual budget or anything like that. It's really to look at your current budget that might be there. I'm more interested in hearing how you would go about thinking about priorities with budgeting? If you were any one of the roles, what would you be looking at and how would you want to use the money that you're given? So if you're a principal, break it down. What would you use the money for? Supplies, professional development, uh, you know, specific speakers coming in, parent engagement. What is it that you would use it for? The numbers aren't that important. It's the why and the rationale behind how would you spend that money. So like I wrote in here, focus more on the reasons behind the budget rather than the budget codes themselves. The budget codes are there and you'll learn more about those next week, but I don't particularly care about the budget codes because you'll find those out and you'll learn those. I care more about how are you using the budget and why. And then here's just the quick rubric, but really in the end, it's you just have some details around the income and expenditures, but I'm more about, again, the justification about why you would spend money a certain way. And again, I don't need to have it down to the cents. All you're doing is picking out maybe 3 to 5 budget focuses that you would do. Like, boy, I would really focus on professional development and culturally relevant practices. Great. Explain why. Maybe because you saw gaps in your equity achievement or your achievement data through the equity audit, and you want to focus on that. That is perfectly fine. If you look at the examples that are in our in resources this week from other students, you will see that it's not as complex as what you might think. It's just breaking it down a little bit and showing what you would do as a leader. All right, thanks. You have reached the end of this module. Please contact me if you have any questions, either private discussion or by email. Thank you.